The assessment senior cataloger Vrixel adjusted his exoskeleton and gazed out at the blue-green planet through the observation deck. After 2,000 cycles of service to the Galactic Union, he'd thought he'd seen it all. His tentacles twitched, with mild interest as he scanned the preliminary data on the holographic display hovering before him. "Another oxygen-nitrogen world," he muttered to his assistant, Lenza. "Third planet from an unremarkable G-type star. Initial scans show basic technology, extensive surface modification, and atmospheric pollution consistent with early industrial development." Lenza's compound eyes flickered rapidly as she processed the information. "The cataloging committee has designated it as Priority Level 4, sir. Standard observation protocol with possibility for expedited contact if warranted." Vrixol made a dismissive gesture with his upper limbs. "Level 4? I can already tell you what we'll find. Primitive bipeds scrambling for resources, fighting petty wars over territory. We'll add them to the database and check back in a few centuries to see if they've managed not to exterminate themselves." The Galactic Union's mission was clear: catalog all sentient species, assess their development, and determine when, or if, they should be welcomed into the interstellar community. In its 30,000 cycles of existence, the Union had brought together over 300 species from across the galaxy, creating the most stable and prosperous coalition in known space. "Prepare a standard first contact assessment team," Vrixol ordered. "Low-profile observation only. Let's get this done quickly. The cataloging committee has that promising aquatic civilization in the Orion Arm waiting for our attention." First contact specialist Mikola could hardly contain her excitement as their shuttle approached Earth's atmosphere. As the newest member of the assessment team, this was her first field mission. She'd graduated at the top of her class at the EEA Union Academy and had studied hundreds of first contact scenarios, but nothing compared to experiencing a new species firsthand. "Stealth systems engaged," announced the pilot, a grizzled Tarsian whose leathery skin bore the scars of numerous expeditions. "We'll be setting down in an uninhabited region designated as Nevada. Atmospheric composition is within tolerable parameters, but environmental suits are mandatory until full biohazard assessment is complete." The shuttle touched down with barely eyeing a whisper on the desert floor. The night sky above was clear, stars twinkling in unfamiliar patterns to Mikola's 4 eyes. The team of 6 specialists efficiently deployed their equipment, setting up a mobile observation post that would be virtually undetectable to the planet's primitive scanning technology. "First impressions, team?" asked mission leader Jorax, a veteran of 17 first contacts. The hulking Braxian's voice rumbled through their comm systems. "Gravity slightly higher than Union standard," noted physiologist Chem. "Temperature fluctuations more extreme than predicted. This region alone shows a 30-degree variation between day and night. Atmospheric analysis shows higher concentrations of pollutants than expected for their technology level," added environmental specialist Zara. "They're burning fossil fuels at an alarming rate." Mikola focused her scanners on the nearest human settlement, approximately 20 kilometers from their landing site. "I'm detecting unusual patterns in their communications network. It's chaotic, but there's an underlying structure. They appear to be exchanging vast amounts of information constantly." "Probably just entertainment and social communications," Jorax dismissed. "Standard for pre-Union cultures. Let's establish our baseline parameters and begin formal observation." 3 days later, the assessment team huddled around their command console in stunned silence. "This can't be right," Chem said, checking his readings for the 5th time. "According to these scans, humans shouldn't even exist on this planet." Zara nodded vigorously. "The environmental conditions alone should have prevented complex life from evolving. Look at these readings. Extreme temperature variations, constant natural disasters, lethal solar radiation, atmospheric toxins, and yet they've not only survived, but built a global civilization," Mikola added, her voice tinged with awe. "I've been monitoring their communications networks. They have thousands of languages, competing governmental systems, and they're constantly at war with each other. But somehow they still function as a planetary society." Jorax's expression was grim. "I've started reviewing their historical records. These humans have endured conditions that would classify their planet as a Class 3 death world at minimum. They've survived multiple extinction-level events, global pandemics, world wars using atomic weapons, and they just keep going." The team fell silent, contemplating the implications. In Union standards, worlds were classified from Class 1, Paradise, worlds with ideal conditions for life, to Class 5, extreme death worlds where sentient life was considered impossible. Most Union species had evolved on Class 1 or 2 worlds. Only the Braxians like Jorax had come from a Class 3 world, which explained their thick, armor-like skin and robust physiology. "I observed a human settlement yesterday," Mikala said quietly. "A place they call Las Vegas. It's built in the middle of a desert where daytime temperatures regularly exceed lethal limits. They've constructed artificial environments just to survive there. And instead of treating it as a hardship outpost, they use it for recreation. Their medical records are equally baffling," added Cam. "Their bodies are remarkably fragile, no natural armor, minimal regenerative capabilities, vulnerable to countless pathogens. Yet they've developed medical technologies to compensate. They routinely perform surgical procedures on themselves that would be considered torture in the Union." Jorax looked troubled. "We need to send this data back to Senior Cataloger Vrixel immediately. This isn't a standard Level 4 assessment anymore. These humans—" He paused, searching for the right words. "They're surviving conditions that should have killed them off millennia ago." Vrixel's office aboard the Union mothership was silent, except for the soft hum of the holographic projector displaying the assessment team's report. His assistant Lenza stood nervously at his side, watching his reaction carefully. "Is this some kind of joke, Lenza?" Vrixel finally asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Has Jorax finally lost his mind after all these years?" "The data has been verified 3 times, sir," Lenza replied. "All readings are accurate. The humans are indeed inhabiting what should be classified as a Class 3 death world, possibly even Class 4 in some regions." Vrixel's tentacles writhed in agitation. "And they've survived not one, but multiple extinction-level events without Union intervention?" "Yes, sir. Most recently, they narrowly avoided a collision with an asteroid that would have eliminated most life on their planet. They detected it early and developed contingency plans, though they ultimately weren't needed when the asteroid's path shifted. And their conflicts? These world wars? They've had 2 major global conflicts in the last century alone, resulting in hundreds of millions of deaths. The second one ended with the deployment of nuclear weapons, but instead of collapsing, they established international diplomatic frameworks and continued developing their civilization." Vrixel rose from his seat and moved to the observation window, staring out at the distant blue planet. "In my 2,000 cycles of service, I've never encountered anything like this. A species that not only survives on a death world, but thrives, despite constantly trying to destroy themselves. What shall we do, sir? The standard protocol would be to—" "Standard protocol doesn't apply here," Vrixel interrupted. "We need to understand these humans better before making any contact decisions. Recategorize Earth as a priority Level 2 assessment immediately. I want specialized observation teams deployed across their planet. Full cultural, technological, and biological analysis." Lenza looked startled. "Level 2, sir? That's reserved for species on the verge of developing interstellar travel. From what I've seen in this report, if these humans set their minds to reaching the stars, nothing will stop them. We need to be prepared." Vrixel turned away from the window, his expression resolute. "And Lenza, submit a request to the cataloging committee. I want a full threat assessment on humanity." A threat assessment? But sir, their technology is centuries behind. Union standards? They haven't even colonized their own solar system yet. Vrixal's eyes narrowed. A species that can survive what should have killed them a dozen times over isn't to be underestimated. These humans have demonstrated something we rarely encounter in the galaxy: sheer, stubborn persistence in the face of impossible odds. And that, Lenza, might be more dangerous than any weapon they could develop. As the orders went out, specialized observation teams began preparing for deployment to Earth. The Union's carefully organized catalog of species had just encountered its most puzzling entry yet, a species that, by all rights, shouldn't exist at all. And yet, not only did they exist, but they had built civilizations, created art, developed technology, and mapped their own genome, all while living on a planet that seemed determined to kill them at every turn. The assessment had only just begun. But one thing was already clear: humanity was unlike anything the Galactic Union had encountered before. And Vrixal couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy would never be the same once these resilient, resourceful beings looked up at the stars and decided to reach for them. The investigation. Impossible, muttered cultural analyst Dresden as he rewatched the footage for the third time. The spindly Altarian's fingers danced over the control panel, rewinding to the moment that had caught his attention. On the screen, a human female lifted a vehicle, a primitive ground transport weighing at least 20 times her body mass, just enough for another human to pull a small creature from underneath it. The analysis showed her stress hormones spiking to levels that should have caused immediate system failure, yet she maintained the lift for nearly 10 seconds before collapsing. "Are you still obsessing over that recording?" asked behavioral specialist Tyla, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with amused patterns. "I've told you, it's a well-documented phenomenon they call hysterical strength. Their bodies can temporarily override their physical limitations in extreme situations." "That's what troubles me," Dresden replied. "No Union species can do that. Without technological assistance, their bodies are objectively weaker than most sentient species, yet they can temporarily transcend those limitations through sheer, what? Willpower?" It had been 3 standard months since the Galactic Union had intensified its observation of Earth, and the specialized teams were scattered across the planet, gathering data on every aspect of human existence. What they found continually defied expectations. "You should see what I've been observing," Tyla said, pulling up her own research on a nearby display. "These humans deliberately expose themselves to microbial threats as juveniles, allowing their immune systems to develop resistance. They call it playing in the dirt. It's effectively controlled exposure therapy on a societal scale." Dresden's antennae twitched in disbelief. "That's barbaric, and yet ingenious in its simplicity." "That's humans for you," Tyla sighed. "Barbaric and ingenious in equal measure." Across the planet, in a region called Siberia, technology assessment. Officer Quill was having similar difficulties reconciling what he was observing. The Makan's metallic exoskeleton hummed softly as he processed the data before him. They build habitats in environments where they cannot naturally survive without technological assistance, he noted into his log, yet they often use the most rudimentary materials and methods. This settlement has endured temperatures of negative 40 standard units, yet some structures are primarily constructed of felled vegetation. His assistant, Rivi, looked up from her analysis of human communication devices. "It's the same with their technology. They develop solutions with whatever materials are available. Did you see the historical records of their early spaceflight program? They reached their moon using computational systems less powerful than our portable diagnostics tools. Efficiency through necessity," Quill theorized. "When resources are limited, innovation becomes essential." "But that's just it," Rivi countered. "By Union standards, this planet is resource-rich. They shouldn't need to be this adaptable. Yet they consistently find ways to survive and advance in conditions that should have stunted their development." Quill's processing lights flickered as he considered this. Perhaps that's why they advance so rapidly. The constant struggle against their environment forces them to innovate continuously. He brought up a timeline of human technological development. Look at this progression. From primitive flight to space exploration in less than a century. From basic computing to global information networks in just decades. The rate of advancement is accelerating exponentially. If they maintain this trajectory, Rivi began, they'll achieve interstellar capability within 50 years, Quill finished. Possibly sooner if they overcome their internal conflicts. In the orbital observation vessel, Senior Cataloger Vrixall reviewed the incoming reports with growing concern. The cataloging committee had initially been skeptical of his decision to elevate Earth to priority level 2, but as data streamed in from the specialized teams, even the most conservative members were becoming uneasy. Their physiological adaptability is unlike anything we've encountered, reported Chief Medical Officer Zen via holographic projection. The Lucerian's translucent skin revealed the flowing patterns of her circulatory system as she spoke. They can survive in environments ranging from sub-zero temperatures to desert heat exceeding 50 standard units. They recover from injuries that would be fatal to most species. Their reproductive cycle is inefficient but remarkably resilient. What about their psychological profile? Vrixall asked. That's even more concerning, replied psychological analyst Morva, joining the conversation. They exhibit extreme territorialism combined with insatiable curiosity. They are simultaneously cooperative and competitive to degrees that seem contradictory. They form emotional bonds quickly, but can also dehumanize their own kind to commit acts of extreme violence. Dehumanize? Vrixall questioned. Their term, not mine, Morva clarified. It means to strip away the qualities that make someone human, essentially to view them as less than their own kind. The fact that they have a specific word for this concept speaks volumes about their psychology. Vrixall's tentacles curled thoughtfully. And their societal structures? Chaotic but strangely functional, replied sociological expert Belize. Multiple competing governance systems, economic models, religious beliefs, and cultural practices, all somehow coexisting on a single planet. Any one of their major ideological conflicts should have led to societal collapse, yet they persist. Most troubling is their attitude toward the unknown, added cultural analyst Dresden. When union species encounter something unknown, the typical response is caution. Humans respond with curiosity that borders on recklessness. They don't just accept risk. They seem to thrive on it. Vrixall absorbed this information silently before speaking. And what of their space exploration efforts? Technology Assessment Officer Quill brought up a detailed holographic display of human space infrastructure. Primitive but ambitious. They've established a modest orbital presence, sent probes throughout their solar system, and landed rudimentary vehicles on their moon and neighboring planet. Their current technology doesn't permit interstellar travel, but they're actively researching theoretical concepts that could lead there. Timeline? Vrixall asked. Based on their current rate of advancement, 50 years at most. However, Quill hesitated. If they were to focus their collective resources on this goal specifically, they could potentially achieve it much sooner. Vrixall dismissed the holographic projections and turned to his assistant. Lenza, what does the threat assessment indicate? Lenza brought up a new display. The committee's analysis is complicated, sir. By conventional metrics, humans pose no immediate threat to the Union. Their technology is primitive, their world is isolated, and they're still engulfed in their own internal conflicts. But, Vrixall prompted, but their adaptability and resilience, factors are off the charts. The committee has never evaluated a species with this particular combination of traits. They're simultaneously fragile and nearly impossible to permanently defeat. The standard models simply don't apply. Vrixall moved to the observation window, watching the blue planet rotate slowly below. They remind me of the Valkyrie myths, he said thoughtfully. Warriors who grew stronger with each defeat, until they became invincible. Sir? Lenza looked confused. An old legend from before the Union, Rixall explained. I never understood it until now. These humans, they don't just survive adversity. They learn from it, adapt to it, overcome it, and emerge stronger than before. The committee is recommending we expand the observation period before making any contact decisions, Lenza noted. Standard protocol would suggest at least 20 more cycles of study. Rixall turned sharply. We don't have 20 cycles. If our projections are correct, they'll be detecting our presence soon enough, regardless of our stealth measures. Their scanning technology is advancing too quickly. What do you recommend, sir? Prepare a contact team, Rixall decided. Not the standard diplomatic corps. I want our best cultural integration specialists, linguistic experts, and negotiators. And brief the Union Council. They need to understand what we're dealing with here. You're suggesting direct first contact? Lenza sounded alarmed. Before they've achieved interstellar capability? That violates our most fundamental protocols. This entire species violates our protocols just by existing, Rixall replied. Think about it, Lenza. If they can achieve what they have while confined to a death world, what will they become once they reach the stars? Better we establish relations now, on our terms, than wait until they burst onto the galactic stage unprepared. A secure chamber deep within the Union mothership, a special council had convened to hear Rixall's proposal. Representatives from 12 of the founding species listened as he presented his findings and recommendations. With all due respect, Senior Cataloger, interrupted Councillor Hraxon, the massive reptilian shifting his bulk uncomfortably, you're suggesting we abandon protocols that have served us for 30,000 cycles based on what? Your intuition? About these humans? Based on data, Rixall corrected firmly. Unprecedented data that suggests we're dealing with an unprecedented species, even if what you say is true, added Councillor Thez, her crystalline form refracting light as she spoke. Why rush into contact? Let them develop naturally. If they're as adaptable as you claim, they'll join the galactic community when they're ready. Rixall activated a holographic simulation. This model shows human expansion based on their current technological trajectory and psychological profile. Within 300 cycles of achieving interstellar travel, they would likely establish a presence in at least 40 star systems. The council members murmured among themselves as they watched the simulation unfold. No current Union species expanded that rapidly, Rixall continued. Their combination of curiosity, adaptability, and determination makes them uniquely suited for space colonization. By the time they encounter the Union naturally, they may be too established for smooth integration. You speak of them as a threat, observed Councillor Mila, the ancient Aquarian's voice rippling like water. Yet your own reports indicate they're capable of remarkable cooperation and compassion. They are not inherently threatening, Rixall clarified. But they are inherently transformative. Whatever environment they enter, they change, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but always significantly. The question is not whether humans will impact the galactic community, but how that impact will be channeled. Silent contemplation filled the chamber as the council members considered his words. What exactly are you proposing? Councillor Hraxon finally asked. Controlled first contact, Rixall replied. A carefully selected delegation meeting with representatives of their major governance bodies. We introduce ourselves, establish basic diplomatic relations, and begin a cultural exchange. Program. We guide them toward peaceful integration with the galactic community before they discover us by accident. And if they react with hostility, pressed Councillor Thez. Rixall's expression remained steady. Our psychological analyses suggest they would only respond with unified hostility if they perceived us as a threat. That's why the approach must be transparent and peaceful. After hours of debate, the Council reached its decision. First contact with humanity would proceed, but with significant restrictions and fail-safes. The Union would reveal itself only to a select group of human representatives, establish limited diplomatic relations, and carefully monitor humanity's response before proceeding with broader disclosure. As the meeting concluded, Councillor Mila approached Vrixall privately. "You seem personally invested in these humans, Senior Cataloger. Why?" Vrixall considered the question carefully. "In my 2000 cycles, I've cataloged hundreds of species. Most followed predictable evolutionary patterns. Humans, they shouldn't exist at all, yet they not only exist, but thrive. They create art while surrounded by danger. They dream of stars they can barely see through their polluted atmosphere. They fight wars over ideology, then write poetry about peace." He paused, searching for the right words. "They make no sense, Counselor, and yet studying them, I've come to believe they might just make sense of us, of the galaxy, of existence itself, in ways we haven't imagined. They see patterns where we see chaos. They find hope where we calculate only failure." "And that interests you scientifically?" Mila inquired. "It interests me existentially," Vrixall admitted. "Perhaps after 30,000 cycles of order and progress, the Union needs a species that thrives in contradiction and adversity. Perhaps we've become too comfortable in our certainties." As Vrixall returned to his ship to prepare for humanity's first official encounter with extraterrestrial life, he couldn't help but wonder if the Union truly understood what it was about to face. Not a threat, perhaps, but certainly a challenge to everything they thought they knew about life in the galaxy. The humans had survived their death world against all odds. Soon they would face their greatest test yet, joining a community of worlds that had evolved in much more forgiving circumstances. Would they adapt to the galactic community as successfully as they had adapted to their harsh home planet? Or would the galaxy itself have to adapt to them? Vrixall suspected he already knew the answer. The revelation dawn broke over the United Nations headquarters in New York as inside. 7 world leaders and their aides sat in stunned silence. Before them stood beings that until yesterday had existed only in science fiction. Aliens, real and undeniably present. Senior Cataloger Vrixall, flanked by his carefully selected contact team, had just completed a 3-hour presentation on the Galactic Union, its 30,000 cycle history, and humanity's newfound place in the cosmic community. "So," the President of the United States finally said, breaking the silence, "you've been watching us for how long exactly?" "Our preliminary assessment began approximately 1 Earth year ago," Vrixall replied. "More intensive observation has been ongoing for 3 months." "And no one noticed?" asked the Chinese premier incredulously. "Our technology allows for effective concealment," explained Technology Liaison Quill. "Though we have had several close encounters with your military detection systems, your species is remarkably observant for your technological level." The Secretary General of the UN leaned forward. "Why reveal yourselves now? By your own admission, we're decades away from developing the technology to join your interstellar community." Vrixall's tentacles made a gesture that his translator rendered as conciliatory. "The Union's standard protocol is indeed to wait until a species achieves interstellar capability independently. However, your species presents unique circumstances." "You mean you think we're dangerous?" the Russian president said flatly. "We think you're exceptional," corrected cultural specialist Tyla. "Your species has survived conditions that would have eliminated most sentient life. You've overcome planetary disasters, self-inflicted crises, and environmental challenges that, by our standards, should have been insurmountable. Your capacity for adaptation concerned us," Vrixall admitted. "Not because we fear you, but because we recognize that once humanity reaches the stars, you will expand and adapt at a rate unprecedented in Union history. We believed it would be mutually beneficial to establish relations before that natural event occurs. The room fell silent again as the human leaders exchanged glances. "So what happens now?" asked the British Prime Minister. "We propose a limited cultural exchange," Rixall explained. "A gradual introduction of our peoples, carefully managed to prevent societal disruption. Access to certain non-critical technologies that would benefit your world immediately, particularly in medicine and environmental restoration, and eventual, carefully staged integration into the galactic community." "And the catch?" the German Chancellor asked skeptically. Rixall hesitated. "The Union Council has concerns about certain human tendencies. Your history of conflict, your competitive instincts, your rapid technological development without corresponding advances in societal stability. They've imposed certain conditions." "Restrictions, you mean?" the Indian Prime Minister stated. "Temporary guidelines," Rixall corrected, "including limits on human expansion beyond your solar system until certain developmental milestones are achieved. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "So you're here to offer us membership in your club," the American president summarized. "But only if we agree to stay in our playpen until you decide we're grown up enough to join the adults." That is a simplification, but not entirely inaccurate, Rixall acknowledged. The Japanese Prime Minister, who had been silent until now, spoke carefully. "And if we decline these terms?" A ripple of unease passed through the alien delegation. "The Union would continue to monitor Earth's development from a distance," Rixall finally said. "Official contact would be postponed until humanity achieved interstellar travel independently. However, once you ventured beyond your solar system, certain preventative measures might be implemented to ensure galactic stability." "You'd contain us," the Russian president said bluntly. Rixall didn't deny it. "The Union has responsibilities to all sentient species. If one poses a potential disruption to galactic peace—" "We get it," interrupted the American president. "Play by your rules or be treated as a threat. That is not how we would characterize—" "We'll need time to discuss this among ourselves," the UN Secretary-General interjected diplomatically. "This is, after all, the most significant decision in human history." "Of course," Rixall agreed. "We will withdraw to our vessel and return in 3 of your days for your response." As the alien delegation departed, the human leaders looked at each other, the weight of representing their entire species suddenly very real. "Well," the British Prime Minister said dryly, "that's certainly one way to unite humanity. Give us all a common problem." Aboard the Union vessel, Rixall's team was conducting their own assessment of the first official contact. They didn't react, as anticipated, noted psychological analyst Morva. The predictive models suggested they would be overwhelmed with awe, possibly even reverence. Instead, they immediately focused on the restrictions. "Of course they did," Tyler responded. "We've been studying them for months. When have humans ever responded to limitations with acceptance?" "The Union Council's conditions are non-negotiable," Lenza reminded them. "The containment protocols were explicit." Rixall had been unusually quiet since returning from Earth. "Perhaps," he finally said, "we have misunderstood something fundamental about humans." "Sir?" Lenza questioned. "We've been approaching them as we would any emerging species, as students to be guided, children to be protected and taught. But that's not what they are." Rixall moved to the observation window, looking down at the blue planet. "They aren't children who survived against the odds. They're warriors who conquered a world that tried to kill them at every turn." "Are you suggesting we should have approached them as equals?" Quill asked, sounding genuinely confused. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their societal structures are primitive by Union standards." "And yet," Rixall countered, "they've accomplished in thousands of years what took most Union species tens of thousands. They've survived extinction events that would have eliminated many of our member worlds without Union intervention. Perhaps technological advancement isn't the only measure of a species' development. A troubled silence fell over the group. The Council won't change their position, Lenza finally said. The containment protocols for potential disruptor species are absolute. Then perhaps, Vrixall replied, we have made a grave error in judgment. 3 days later, the alien delegation returned to find not just the original 7 leaders, but representatives from every nation on Earth. The General Assembly Hall was filled to capacity, with billions more watching via global broadcast. Humanity's existence irrevocably altered by the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. The Secretary General stepped forward. Senior Cataloger Vrixall, we thank you for your patience. Earth has reached its decision. Vrixall inclined his upper body in acknowledgement. The Union welcomes humanity's response. We appreciate the Galactic Union's offer, the Secretary General began diplomatically, and we are eager to establish peaceful relations with all sentient species. However, after careful consideration, we must respectfully decline the specific terms presented. A murmur ran through the alien delegation. This was unprecedented. Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding, Vrixall suggested carefully. No, misunderstanding. The American president stepped forward. We understand perfectly. You're offering us a cage with nice amenities. We're declining. That characterization is not accurate, Quill objected. The Union offers protection, guidance, technological advancement, with strings attached, the Russian president interrupted. Restrictions on our movement, our development, our self-determination. These measures are temporary, Vrixall insisted. Merely until humanity has demonstrated that we can behave, the Chinese premier finished. That we won't disturb your carefully ordered galaxy. We've reviewed your proposal thoroughly, Senior Cataloger. The temporary restrictions could last centuries by your own metrics. Vrixall's tentacles twitched with agitation. You must understand the Union's concerns. Your species has demonstrated remarkable advancement coupled with concerning tendencies toward conflict. The potential for disruption is exactly what makes us human, the Indian Prime Minister stated firmly. Our conflicts, our struggles, our constant pushing against limitations, these aren't flaws to be corrected. They're the forge that has shaped us. We have a counter-proposal, the Secretary General announced, handing Vrixall a data device. Earth is willing to establish diplomatic relations with the Galactic Union as an independent entity. We will share cultural exchanges, establish trade relations, and work cooperatively on matters of mutual concern, but as equals, not as wards. Vrixall scanned the document, his expression unreadable to human eyes. This proposal contradicts fundamental Union protocols for emerging species. The Council will not accept these terms. Then the Council has a decision to make, the German Chancellor said. Because humanity will reach the stars with or without your approval. The only question is whether we do so as your partners or despite your restrictions. You cannot simply reject 30,000 cycles of established order, Lenza objected, breaking protocol in her shock. Watch us, the American president replied with a hint of a smile. It's kind of our specialty. The next 8 hours were filled with intense negotiation. The human delegation remained united in their core demand. Earth would join the galactic community only as a full, unrestricted member. The Union representatives explained repeatedly why this was impossible, citing protocols, risk assessments, and historical precedents. Throughout it all, Senior Cataloger Vrixall had grown increasingly quiet, observing the humans with newfound understanding. The end.